So that first item was to endorse minutes. We'll move from that on to public comments. So if there's anyone from the public that would like to give a comment or share a comment, provide your name and address, get that for the record. Hearing no comments, that I would like to also mention that you can send comments into comments@gnrc.org. That's comments@gnrc.org. So that will roll us into action items. The first item on the agenda today is amendments to the fiscal year 2020/23 TIP, and Anna Emerson will lead us on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. We have for your review today the third cycle of amendments for federal fiscal year 2021 to our current TIP. There's a slate of 6 proposed amendments here for us to look at, and we have not reviewed these amendments together yet. So I'm going to go through each of these and give you guys the opportunity to look them over and ask me questions you may have. The first proposed amendment is requested by the city of Gallatin. It's for their IPS Phase 2 project. This project was awarded to Gallatin through TDOT CMAQ program, and so they are requesting to have the project added to the TIP. The second amendment also requests from the city of Gallatin for their Lock 4 multi-use trail. This was also a CMAQ award provided to the city of Gallatin, and so they are requesting to add this project to the TIP. Following that, we have a request from PDOT for the Charlotte Pike widening. This was originally from I-42 American Road. Part of this amendment is a request to revise those termini to near I-40 to near Annex Avenue and Hillwood Boulevard. And they are also requesting to add additional NHPP funds to this project. Next request, very similar to the one we just looked at. This is for the Charlotte Pike Widening Phase 1 project. This was originally listed as American Road to White Ridge Road. Termini are being revised to near Annex Avenue and Hillwood Boulevard to near White Ridge Road. They are also requesting to add NHPP funds to this project as well. Following that, we have another request from TDOT for their I-24 Smart Corridor Phase 3 project. They are requesting to add this project to the TIP with SDPG funds. And then we have our last proposed amendment, a request from TDOT for their I-24 Open Roads Test Bed project. This was also awarded through the CMAQ program. So TDOT is requesting to add this project to the TIP. If anyone has any questions on any of these projects, the amendments proposed, location, anything like that, happy to take those questions now. Thank you. We have a staff member, Ashley Glasscock, worked really hard on this cool new application that we will also have available on the web. You can review it anytime. Really slick. I agree. Yeah, we like it too.
And I think one other thing to mention on this is that the cycles are archived. So if you want to look back at a previous amendment cycle, you can track that as well.
Thank you. And are there any follow-up questions or information needed on this amendment?
Charlotte Pike project that mile long, $120 million. Feasibility study.
So that into a feasibility study. And I can share that with you.
I main reasons. Way it goes.
Correct. If there are no more questions, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is amendments to the fiscal year 2020/21 UPWP and Sean Falker. Welcome to-
Let me just make sure that the folks that are joining us remotely are seeing the right slides now. Apologies for that. Okay, I think we are now all on the same slide. Apologies for that. So the second item that we have today is the amendment to the federal fiscal years 2020 to 2021 Unified Planning Work Program. This is the first of two items related to our Unified Transportation Planning Work Program, or UPWP. This amendment is to the current work program that extends through September 30th of this year. And mainly these amendments are to capture the addition of two planning grants that were awarded through the Tennessee Department of Transportation. One through they had a residual 5303 call for projects last summer. And this would be to award funding to an in-motion update that will be carried out with WeGo and with RTA and GNRC. And that total cost of that project is $650,000, and that 5303 federal award would be for $240,000 of that. The additional funds would come from 5307 federal sources, as well as state and local funding sources. And then the second would be through the TDOT's initial round of the Urban Transportation Planning Grant, and this would be for the Sumner County Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan that will involve Sumner County as well as all of the jurisdictions within Sumner County. Total effort, or the estimated cost for that effort, is about $150,000, with 10% of the match coming from those local jurisdictions within Sumner County. And so we just wanted to present the addition of these amendments into the Unified Planning Work Program for your consideration, and happy to take any questions.
Until the policy board adopts this part of the amended work program, we won't get those.
That's a great question. I don't anticipate that going at all. Let me get you a detailed answer. That's a good question.
Yeah.
Recommendation, but I guess it's not policy.
Yeah, and I think related to that question, one of the impetus for making sure that this is captured in the UPWP is to not hold up anything as you guys move forward on this project, because I know you have a pretty tight schedule of wanting to complete this effort by the end of this year, and so.
Yeah.
More important, way more than you.
I think we have a question from Sean Santaya, who's attending virtually.
Yeah, hey Sean, I'm sorry. I don't know if you guys can hear me. We're having a little trouble hearing, but I think what I'm gathering on the conversation here is about the, being able to advance this program or this project rather. And I will say that this project has also been amended into the state's planning work program. So we are at this point ready to go ahead with authorization as far as the programming requirements go. Adding it to the UPWP is another great step for transparency purposes, documentation purposes. But we have satisfied the documentation requirements that would be required for authorization, for federal authorization.
Great, thank you, Sean.
Do you have any other follow-up questions for Sean regarding the UPWP? Great. With that, we'll move on to the next item or action item, which is transit safety performance targets. And Daniel Caparella will lead us on this.
Thank you, Glenn. Morning, everybody. So you may remember a few months ago when we adopted safety performance targets through the RTP process as a federal planning requirement. But in 2018, the Federal Transit Administration published the Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan Final Rule, which required public transit providers who receive federal funds through the 5307 grant program to develop safety plans, which requires them to develop a plan that details processes and procedures to implement safety management systems, as well as adopt safety targets. And the MPO's role in that is to adopt targets specific to the MPO planning area and adopt the safety plans that each of our transit agencies in the region are required to complete. And we have to reference safety performance measures within our planning documents, like the TIP and the RTP. So the goal of this is really to set safety goals and reduce the likelihood of safety events caused by mechanical failures or other safety management issues within our transit agencies. Next slide. So on the screen, you'll see the safety performance targets broken out by mode and by each of our transit agencies. So EGO, RTA, Franklin Transit Authority, and Murfreesboro Rover. Those are also broken out by the targets. So there's fatalities, fatality rate, injuries, injury rate, safety events, and system reliability. System reliability is just the average distance between major mechanical failures by mode. And so you'll see fixed route and demand response as well as commuter. So this represents all of the transit agencies in our region who have all completed each of their safety plans. And the MPO's role in this, we're recommending to process these as part of an administrative modification. And I will mention that in conversations with our transit agencies, we all agreed that a Vision Zero route with in respect to fatalities is the best and most expected goal for fatalities. So you could take a look at those. I'll hand it back to Glenn.
Thank you. Are there any follow-up questions or any information needed from Daniel?
What are safety events?
Safety events are just the total number of safety events reported to the National Transit Database.
I can give you a definition of how we define it in the land, but else. Safety event is a collision, derailment, fire, hazardous material spill, act of nature, evacuation, or other safety occurrence not otherwise classified, occurring in transit right of way, resulting in injury, requiring transfer away from the scene for medical attention for one or more persons, or an estimated property damage equivalent to or exceeding $5,000.
And I think just adding on to that too, a safety event could have multiple injuries, which is why some of those numbers on the injury side might be higher than the event side.
It's mainly an operational issue as opposed to a behavioral issue. Context.
I didn't hear the end of the question.
I was just trying to state that safety is related to the operations of the transit facilities equipment as opposed to a possibility of safety based on behavior, someone's behavior, misbehavior. That's what I was trying to do.
If either one of those gets hurt, whenever one of those safety events, because outside behavior, versus behavior will be affected by that.
And to track these numbers that are reported here are existing ratios. For example, vehicle revenue miles for failure, I guess. Is that existing or is that a guide?
That's a performance target we're trying to achieve, and look at previous years data on how many failures we had for revenue, vehicle revenue miles. To determine that number. So then we'll start the price.
Okay, so this measure is improved, allowed it in, from what it currently is operating at.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
In the interest of having comprehensive list of, I guess, drainage alternatives, is installed in the access second bid for the fixed route bus for we go, or is that going to follow on the end? Got, STAR is captured separately because it's not under these plans for bus. The STAR will be captured under the requirements of the FRA, Federal Railroad Administration. So it's not part of a specific plan, it's only applies for buses and what about the community being comprehensive in terms of training, safety, performance targets? It doesn't very good on the state. I did have a question about the injuries. These include everything from car accidents to or pedestrian accidents, to people tripping on the way out of the cab, pulling their ankle, or I think as far as the transit vehicles involved, it could be a pedestrian that is getting hit by a bus, or if somebody was ground bus and was hit by a car. It'll be captured. I'm trying to figure out if these numbers include silly things like somebody gets up with a bad bus seat, gets their arm off, make all those injuries. I personally don't think that money back.
So we have to follow the conditions though, so if they require medical attention, we're going to have to.
Okay, so they would be. Yeah. You got any idea how many of these reported your agency or those type of factors? Car or bus or pedestrian? I don't know, we can check with the city manager, but I would think something on this one. You got a bus, 40-foot, 60-foot bus hit by a car, you got 30 people in the bus, and there's a lot of people out there on something. That's going to be the most. I stood on the bus. Right. I'm just curious how big of an issue that is. Sure. Well, we can have our chief safety officer here on this.
Thank you. Are there any more additional questions? Hearing none, we'll move into informational items. The first informational item that we have today is COVID relief funds call for project. And Sean will tell us about it.
Great, thank you, Glenn. So today I wanted to give an update. I know we've talked about the COVID relief funds and the process to go through for prioritizing those. We started talking about this several months back, and so We want to give you kind of a recap and an update on what we've been thinking through and feedback that we've received over the past couple months to inform an upcoming call for projects. And so, as you recall, the formal name of the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, kind of known more commonly as CRISA, it identified funding across the country to address COVID-19 impacts. And this funding had about $10 million across the country, $10 billion across the country. There was no federal match required for the use of this funds, and the eligibility had broader eligibility than we typically receive through our funding pots, but it was very similar to what we received through the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program, which is one of the most eligible funding sources across different funding types and project types. And so a couple of details about the COVID relief funding. As I mentioned, about $10 billion nationwide, about $210 million of that coming to Tennessee in particular, and then the sub-allocations to the metropolitan areas across the state of Tennessee, about $7.9 million coming to the Nashville UZA, and TDOT also sub-allocated an additional about $800,000 to the Murfreesboro UZA as well. One difference between those, the match requirement of 100% federal funds being eligible applies to both funding to both the Nashville and Murfreesboro UZA. However, the deadline for that TDOT imposed for the Murfreesboro UZA funding is December 31st, 2022, which is pretty quick turnaround. The deadline for the Nashville UZA funding is September 30th, 2024, which is also a pretty quick turnaround. And so that's been part of our thought process in working through what a call for projects looks like. As you recall, we were thinking that more suitable projects for these funding sources would be lower cost projects that would have a better chance of moving through the project development process quickly, because we know that going through each step of the project development process requires time and effort. And so through that process, we identified, had you all participate in a survey, and a couple things from that survey that we'll relay to you today. One was we also proposed the idea of recommending a share of the funding be used to accelerate the acquisition of big data tools to improve kind of transportation planning and system monitoring across the region. And some of the feedback that we heard on that from the survey was, making sure that funding was a set percentage of that COVID relief funding, helping ensure that data was usable by you all at multiple levels of government, from the local to regional, state level, and then kind of making sure that it not only kind of complements but supplements some of the existing data sources that we have currently, and then the idea of using it to gather public support and to help prioritize projects, whether it be through the RTP process or through kind of these call for project cycles or set asides that we have frequently. Another feedback that we received was a couple of project types that were of a higher priority, and those being roadway safety improvements, transportation technology upgrades, sidewalk connectivity and pedestrian improvements, as well as ADA related improvements. And so we've taken that into consideration and tried to identify, based on those project types that were of higher priority, what are those potential activities that would fall under those broader project type categories. And so this slide is busy with a number of examples, but I want to give you an idea of some of those project improvements or potential activities that could be captured as part of this call for projects. And so hopefully this gives a better sense of it gives you some ideas to think through on potential submissions. And so, on the roadway safety improvement side, anything from traffic signal upgrades or signalization improvements, lighting, striping, facilities or traffic calming measures. On the technology upgrades, ITS improvements or transit fare equipment upgrades or fleet modernization, I think would all be eligible items. On the sidewalk connectivity, anything from the pedestrian signal upgrades to crossing improvements and potential transit access or bus stop improvements as well. And then for the ADA related, sidewalk repairs or curb ramp upgrades or auditory signal upgrades as potential activities. And so in thinking through what the application components would look like, we've identified a number of sections that or components that we would be asking you for, but you'll notice as we get to the next slide with the schedule, through this process, we're looking to have a pre-application as well as a formal application. I know TDOT has utilized that technique for a number of their grants, and I think for something like this where it's fairly new and we have kind of a pretty broad set of project types and eligible activities under this, having a pre-application will provide us an opportunity to screen some of the project ideas that you guys have in mind, and then we can work through those to then ensure that we're not wasting any of your time in helping identify that this is a good project to be considered for the formal application process. And so of these components, I think on the pre-application, we mainly just be looking for project description and schedule and budget as the primary components that we'll need to kind of do that initial screening. But if there's any questions or thoughts on other items here, feel free to raise those today. And then just in terms of the schedule, what we're looking for, planning to have a formal call for projects issued at the Transportation Policy Board meeting this month. And then we would open up that pre-application period, have a couple of weeks for you all to submit us your ideas, and then we can screen those before moving on to a formal application cycle. And then looking to get those evaluated and grants awarded by September, the end of the federal fiscal year. So that's all with the update on the COVID relief funds. Happy to take any questions or comments. Jim.
I think it's showing it's been obligated by the city in 2022. All of the process of having to get it sold on hopefully that time. We're helping hostage.
We need to start with this. You're right, especially there. Right now, as far as the season, I don't think so. I don't believe we can start it.
To Jim's point, does this product fund, does it have to adhere to all the same CFR, TDOT policies, requirements? It's normal. What are we going to do?
It'll go through local programs,
All right.
actual process.
It's a free project.
Question. Is it total 7.9 in projects cast? We have on total cost of budget 5.
We haven't set a cap, but I think that's something to be considered as we issue this formal call. I think that might help through the screening process to identify the number of submissions. Obviously, we want to get this funding obligated, and so if there was the situation where there's only one project submitted, I think we would try and award that funding, but I think we haven't set a hard and fast number yet, but I think ideally we would like to identify number of projects for these funds if possible.
Which of the funds had to be obligated by the December 2022?
So in terms of the obligation deadlines, we're looking for the difference between those would be the Nashville UZA funding would have a deadline of September 30th, 2024, and the Murfreesboro UZA funding would have a deadline of December 31st, 2022.
That's the obligation deadline, spending funds as well.
Yeah, I think for both of those, I believe, was it 2028 or 2029 for the Nashville UZA? Jim, do you happen to know the Murfreesboro UZA? We can double check, but I think that there was a 4 or 5 year window. Yeah, I think Sean Sentaya in the chat confirmed it's 2029 for the Nashville UZA. Yeah, September 30th, 2029.
ITS related type projects oftentimes, I guess if it does qualify as true ITS benefits, systems engineering analysis, then that would be part of the requirement as well.
Yeah, I think our understanding is everything that local programs would require would be subject to these funds as well.
Thank you, Sean. Are there any more questions regarding this item? Or should we call for projects? Our next informational item is a presentation of the fiscal year 2022-2023 work program. Mr. Baldwin will lead us on that one as well.
Thank you, Glenn. So the second UPWP item that we have is a presentation of the upcoming work program for the next 2 federal fiscal years, 2022 and 2023. We've wanted to give you an update on progress that we've made, some of the input that we've received, and kind of where we stand, some of the planning activities that have been identified. And so in your packet, we provided a link to the latest draft document of the Unified Planning Work Program that we've been working through TDOT to address any questions or concerns that they have before it gets submitted on to Federal Highway for their review. But just to kind of recap, kind of the 2 main purposes is not only identifying through the work program the activities that are going to be occurring within our region, both at the local, regional, and state level, but also documenting what the NPO staff will be working on, GNRC will be working on over the coming years. Some of those priority activities, obviously a lot of those being kind of the core products as part of the 3C metropolitan planning process, but also some of the standalone or discrete studies that we participate in on an ongoing basis. And so through kind of a similar survey to the COVID relief, we also asked what kind of issues that you think would be priorities to address through the work program. And we heard that high priorities include the worsening traffic congestion, as well as the rise in serious injuries and fatalities across the region, and as well as the limited funding and financing options. And so those were factors that we considered as part of developing this work program. As I mentioned, a lot of the work program that's contained in the UPWP spans kind of the outreach and engagement efforts that we're involved with on an ongoing basis, the research and data analysis that we do, not only to develop the plans and programs, but to support the local planning efforts as well, policy coordination as well as funding. And so the work program identifies some of the existing things that we're doing to maintain our website and kind of maintain a lot of those existing policy boards and relationships with partners and groups throughout the region. But it also identifies kind of some new areas that we've identified and areas that we'd like to establish either new data tools and software to utilize or some new roundtables or task forces to convene in order to address some of the issues within our region. I think one that we've identified through the work program that we'll talk a little bit more about in the coming months is I don't know if we have a formal name, but a TIP committee or a project delivery task force, as we've talked about in previous meetings or past years about the unobligated balance that has built up of this STBG funds within the national area. And then also, funding, we've administered not only the active transportation program and the transit technology program, but as opportunities become available, like the COVID relief funding, to administer those call for projects. And then, if any new funding programs arise or that we can take advantage of to work to advance those. Here's a list of some of the planning activities that are kind of known and underway, such as the ITS architecture, smart mobility assessment that's wrapping up. The other activities include the Interloop study as well as the South Corridor study that we hope to wrap up in the coming year as well. And then some of the planned activities that we have had some initial conversations about with the scoping sessions that were held late April, early May, related to the next phase of a regional freight study, as well as taking on a regional traffic impact study over the next UPWP cycle. And then also some proposed activities included in the work program include a regional conservation and preservation strategy, an update to the Coordinated Human Services Transportation Plan that was last updated in 2016, I believe, and a regional pedestrian safety initiative or action plan to better address some of the rising trends in pedestrian fatalities across the region. So as I mentioned, the planned activities include that freight study and the traffic impact study. We're still kind of working through some of the feedback that we've received through a survey that we've had kind of as a follow-up to those efforts. And so far we've received some really good recommendations on potential objectives to address through the traffic impact study, as well as some stakeholders to reach out to as we kind of flush out the scope of work, as well as some good resources to consider as we embark on that work. And so we'll keep those surveys open and encourage you to, if you haven't completed those yet, to weigh in and provide us some additional guidance. And then we'll work to identify a request for an RFP review committee for both of these efforts with interested members. And then this is the link to provide impact on both, provide input on both the freight study as well as that traffic impact study. We'll include these as well in the follow-up email, but we'll keep those open and continue to get some ideas and best practices to capture as part of this effort. And then just a little bit more detail on these additional planning activities that we've proposed, both the regional conservation preservation strategy, just continuing on the environmental front to document some of the natural resources and trends that we identified through the regional transportation plan update. And then to better kind of develop some of those regional priorities in order to identify strategies and tools for state and local governments to implement moving forward. In terms of the Coordinated Human Services Transportation Plan, kind of taking a fresh look at the existing transportation services and needs of older adults as well as those with individuals with disabilities in order to identify and prioritize some of those strategies to meet those needs moving forward. As you're maybe familiar, we have an annual call for projects through the enhanced mobilities for seniors and individuals with disabilities, and this plan would help inform those priorities through that annual call for projects. And then lastly, the Regional Pedestrian Safety Action Plan or Safety Initiative, really trying to establish a framework for focusing on improving safety for pedestrians and active transportation users within the region to guide not only the strategies that are being implemented at the regional level, but also there's local efforts and state efforts as well, and how to kind of leverage those efforts going forward. And so today we're presenting that draft work program. The schedule that we are hoping to stick with is to get the draft document out for public review and comment. We try to avoid a meeting in July, and so if we could stay on schedule to get that draft available for public review and comment, then I think the goal is for all of the MPOs across the state to have a adopted UPWP by August, and so that would allow us to come back at our August meeting and endorse that UPWP for adoption by the Transportation Policy Board. And we'll send this around, but if you have an opportunity to review this document, it's at the link below at the Document Center on our website. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Just to let everyone know from TDOT's perspective, UPWP is a joint partnership with TDOT and Federal Highway. So the first draft of the document, GNRC submitted that to us in late April. In early May, we sent our comments back to the GNRC. And this past Friday, GNRC addressed our first round of comments, and we have not officially reviewed the second draft yet. I know you all have attached to the email packet, but this Friday before this one, TDOT officially sent that to Federal Highway to review, and then Federal Highway has to July 2nd to address those comments. So just on kind of our end, just letting you know how that works. There's a lot of people in the background reviewing these documents. So July 2nd is when you also see that Federal Highway.
One other thing to note too, in addition to a number of the activities that GNRC staff will be engaged in over the next 2 years, there's also a list of items of other planning activities that are occurring at the state, regional, and local level. And so we've included a number of planning activities that you all are submitted to us. And so feel free to take a look through those. Send us any corrections or updates that you have. We tried to capture, a lot of those submissions that you guys noted in your surveys, or, as we touched base one-on-one over the course of March and April. And so appreciate that. I think it's a pretty robust list of activities that are going on in the region.
Thanks, Sean. Are there any more questions regarding the UPWP 2023 work program?
The deadline for getting comments on this draft.
You can submit us comments at any time. We still have an opportunity to kind of work through the updates before the adoption scheduled for August. But the sooner the better, as we're kind of working back and forth on some updates with state and federal partners.
And you need the best contact for that?
Yeah, you can submit them to me.
the last time the rate study was updated was 5 years ago.
I think so. We identified a number of the different studies that we've done over time, and I think the last what we kind of identified as phase 3 of the freight planning work was 2016 or 2017, I believe.
Great, thanks for that information, Sean. With that, we'll move on to the regular reports. First, it's Federal Highway. Sean Santala, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Glenn. Obviously, FHWA has not been cleared for travel or participation in in-person activities yet, so we are still in a full-time telework status. Hopefully, there are discussions happening about revising that policy. So hopefully, we'll be able to join you guys for a future version of this meeting. Shortly here soon. The primary item I wanted to mention, funding opportunity. Sean, do you have a slide for the RAISE program? So our Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity Notice of Funding Opportunity has been issued, and I'm sure many of you are already aware of this opportunity, but we just wanted to promote it in this setting here. This is formerly our Build and Tiger program. So this area does have familiarity with the build program. The I-65 Buckner Interchange in Spring Hill was awarded through that program. So we have had success in receiving funding through these types of opportunities. So wanted to make sure that everyone was aware. The objectives have been revised slightly in response to the new administration's priorities. They're going to be looking for projects that improve racial equity, reduce impacts on climate change, focus on job creation. We've got $1 billion available nationwide. No more than 100 million is planning to be awarded to a single state, and then a maximum award per project of $25 million with an 80% federal share on that and 20% non-federal share. Eligible projects for this discretionary program include both capital and planning projects. The deadline for grant applications is July 12th, and I believe that our agency or US DOT is scheduling webinars for potential applicants, and there's more information available on the RAISE grants website, the transportation.gov/RAISE, I believe it is, something like that. So that was the main thing I wanted to mention. I'll also mention FHWA has been involved in discussions related to the infrastructure package and the administration's infrastructure priorities and the reauthorization of the FAST Act. There's discussion that you all are likely aware of regarding potential earmarking of projects and other approaches to what the next iteration of infrastructure funding is going to look like. We obviously can't comment on anything that's still working its way through the lawmaking process, but we'll be sure to share anything that we become aware of as soon as we're able. And then last thing, FHWA's headquarters Office of Planning is starting up a research project on MPO target setting and trying to identify what the sort of landscape looks like as far as MPOs, how they have incorporated performance-based planning into their processes, and what kinds of targets have been set by MPOs. So with the Nashville MPO being the first MPO in Tennessee here to set its own safety targets, we have provided that as an example in response to that survey or to a survey associated with that project. So no real action needed from the MPO on your part at this time, but just wanted to make you all aware in case there is further discussion later on as that research project is continues. So that was all that I had. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Sean? Don't see any. Thanks for all the information, and we look forward to seeing you in person in the near future. Next on the reports are TDOT, Mr. Russell.
Just so you know, just to piggyback on the raise grant that Sean spoke about, if any of you are interested in applying for that raise grant, and you would like a letter of support from TDOT, please reach out to us as soon as possible. We're making a list of all the communities who are interested in the letter of support. TDOT is not willing to commit money to any of those projects right now, but we are willing to have a letter of support. So you can feel free to reach out now. Secondly, a lot of you are familiar with the local access grant. We've had that for 7 years now, 95% state funds, 5% local match. We are announcing that grant hopefully today or tomorrow. They've already made a selection, we're just waiting for final approval. We were told today or tomorrow. So also on that note, if we're trying to get back to the cycle, the local access grants, we're actually about to create a new round of applications that are going to go July the 1st. And those will actually be announced by the end of the year. So it's going to be a very short cycle. So if you're interested in that, yeah, announcements coming this week. New rounds starting July 1st, probably next end of the year. Also something that I'm excited as far as TDOT is concerned. TDOT has created a new website called iTrip. iTrip stands for the Interactive Tennessee Road Improvement Program. That is a database that I believe Sean's going to put up on the screen. That is where you can find all active and planned TDOT projects. I think you might remember in 2016 when we had the Improve Act, TDOT created a website called Spot where you could look at different projects. We were told that was going to be updated frequently. It turned out that was not the truth. So that was scrapped. Improve Act has obviously been approved, and now this is TDOT's, in my opinion, great attempt to be as transparent as possible. You can break this down by your county, by the EPO, however you want to break it down. It shows all the projects across the state. It even shows our little map right there. TDOT tries to be equitable geographically, how each region is getting projects. So you can click that on some of those. It'll tell you when it's actually going to be led to right away, where it led to construction, when right away is going to be started or completed. So this is a great transparent way that TDOT's trying to be upfront about what's going on. I will tell you this even includes resurfacings. Pretty comprehensive. So it's not just large scale projects, it's resurfacings. Now we have a 3-year resurfacing plan now. I do know on resurfacing only 1 year is shown out in 2023 on here. So if it's not on this database, it does not exist correctly on TDOT as part of active, any type of active project. If you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out. I'm sure someone will put the link in the chat that goes online, but if you just Google TDOT iTrip, ITRIP, it's the second thing that pops up. So I encourage you to look at that. Other than that, I will say that this year we're supposed to kick off our long-range transportation plan update. It lasted 2015. Because of COVID, we put that off. And so we used this year to actually meet with all of the RPOs and NPOs across the state to determine how they want to be involved in the long-range plan update. Look for that to officially start the first of the year 2022. But if any of you would like to be involved, I know last year, 2015, we did great public involvement, but I don't think we did great public involvement with the NPOs. So just keep that on your radar that it's about to start happening, and we'd love to be involved a lot more with the NPOs. Sean, do you have any questions? Oh, yes, thank you. That was my list. I've got it. CMAQ. In 5 of the 7 member counties, with the exception of Robertson and Bergen counties, you're all eligible for CMAQ funds. The letter of intent opened this past, yesterday, June 1st. The letter of intent is due next Monday. It's very short. So if you are interested in that, please don't hesitate. We have money. If you have any questions about that, reach out to me or Brian Vincent. Yes.
Just the letters of intent would be prior to June 4th.
Friday, June
That
4th.
was my understanding.
It's Monday the 7th. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Monday the 7th. Yes. 4:30. Yeah. Thank you for that. Any questions about CMAQ or anything else?
Thank you, John. So for the chair's report, I'd like to let you all know that Amtrak was at the Transportation Policy Board in March and talked about reintroducing intercity rail to the Middle Tennessee area. Since then, GNRC has received a lot of comments from local communities and mayors wanting to know how to support or find out more information. Policy Board Chair Mayor Vogel has asked the City of Lebanon Mayor Rick Bell to pull together a group of board members to discuss it further. He'll convene a meeting or two between now and August and hope to hear more then. If you have any questions or need more information on that, feel free to reach out to Sean. We'll get you connected there. That'll move into staff reports.
Thank you, Glenn. Not too many staff reports. Just wanted to recap. We had a pedestrian safety workshop at the end of April that a number of you attended. Good participation there, and thanks to FHWA for helping us put that on. Covered a lot of safety trends across the national level, state level, as well as the regional level, and identified some potential strategies that we can utilize within our region to address pedestrian safety. And so we look to continue building on that. And we've had some follow-up conversations at our Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee as well to kind of take what we've learned and kind of employ it moving forward. If you're interested in viewing the slides or the recording, we'll pass along that link, but they're in the slides as well. And then just to mention one more thing about the scoping sessions. We'll, as we continue to work through those and gather your feedback on the kind of the direction that we should take those efforts, I may be reaching out for recruiting folks for the, either you can recruit yourselves or we may be recruiting individuals for that RFP review committee for both the freight study effort as well as the traffic impact study. So feel free to continue providing your input, and then maybe if you're interested, let me know if you want to participate in those efforts as well. And we'll send around a follow-up email with a lot of this information that's been covered, with links to the grant opportunities and other resources as well. I guess actually we have one more. Wanted to announce. Jessica, did you want to? I think it's been Jessica Hill, our Community and Regional Planning Director at GNRC, was probably introduced virtually, but now that we're all in person, Jessica Hill is there in the corner managing the chat box for us for those that are attending virtually. And we just wanted to note two staffing updates. Do you want to mention Keelan?
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. It's nice to be here in person finally. I'm Jessica Hill, joined GNRC back in January, but I'm excited to announce, I'm excited to announce that we have one new staff hire and one transfer from the research and data team. Kirsten Cooper will be joining the planning department beginning in July, serving in the role of environmental planning, conservation planning, and equity. So she'll be participating both in the NPO, the transportation realm, as well as on the lead side. But we're really happy to have her. We're sad to see her lead research, but we're happy to have her on our team. And then the second hire is Phil Black. She was formerly, or is currently still serving as exam for Portland. But she will be joining GNRC to serve on the on-call local planning assistance contract and special projects like comp plan and other that we have. So really looking forward to having both those new staff members join us. Who will be joining us mid-month. So nice to meet you all. Look forward to working with you on these.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jessica. And I think that's all we have for staff updates.
With that, we'll move to other business. Is there any other business from the committee today? All right, we'll be adjourned until August the 4th.